Hello and welcome to What We're Watching. It's Katherine.
And Liz.
And Ed.
And John.
So I was very excited that House of the Dragon came back. And then I realized, oh my gosh, as I was watching the first episode, I really don't remember most of what happened in the entire first season. John was watching it.
You are not alone in that.
Yeah, John was watching it with my husband and I. And did you have the same feeling, John? There was so much.
I did not agree with you because although it's very hard to remember, I think they reminded us of enough. And I think anything we don't remember, we shouldn't worry about.
Okay. It'll get folded in as we go along, hopefully, that they'll give us enough little kernels to remember things. But I was like, oh my God, there's so many names and so many relationships and then
So many dead characters. It's hard to remember.
so many dead characters and then confusion for me on, wait, is that person married to their brother? Yes. Weird and gross. Yeah, the king is married to his sister, the current usurper king.
Oh, yeah, that might be true.
Yeah.
Whoa, John, are you a little confused?
Yeah, how dare you?
Does it matter?
I guess not.
That is his position. Even when we were talking about it right after, he was just like, it's fine. Just roll with it. It'll either become clear or not matter or whatever. But yeah, I was very much like trying to remember whose bastard children people were too. I was like, who is the father of this set of children? And who is it? Because there's like different white cloak knights that are, right?
That was your first thing that I thought you were going to say. And then when you started talking about a couple, I thought you were talking about a different incestuous marriage. So that was my first. That was why I was like, oh, they're not brothers. Oh, I'm thinking of the wrong couple. Because that's uncle and a niece. No big deal.
They're not married, are they?
Worse.
Yeah.
No, they're not. Are
what?
they? Are they together?
They had a
I don't-
Targaryen ceremony with fire.
They did? Oh my God, I
they
can't remember.
Painted their forehead. It was
Wait, so is
good.
that, you're talking about the Matt Smith character and the Emma Darcy character? They're, right?
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
I mean, if I'm getting anything right, which I might not be.
Okay.
Oh, Lord.
All right, well, let's just recap a little bit of where we're at right now. So it just came back. It's on HBO/Max, depending on where you can watch it or whatever. The main character is Emma Darcy's character. That's Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen. And she may or may not be married to the Matt Smith character, Daemon Targaryen. But what?
According to Wikipedia, that is her uncle husband.
Okay, so uncle husband.
That is a hyphen situation.
That is weird.
In modern times would not be acceptable.
And she definitely had three.
That's my uncle. Leave him alone.
Oh, God. Uncle. I was also going to say, unless you're depending on if you live in the state of, but I'm not going to
No,
do that.
don't
I
do
won't.
that. We
I
don't
won't.
need to. Yeah,
No,
we don't
I
need
won't.
to.
I won't.
I mean, definitely the Targaryen situation is
Family
very.
tree is very muddled.
It's
Yeah.
fine when they do it.
Yeah, is it? It's still gross.
It's science fiction.
It's the dragon
It's
blood.
fantasy, technically.
Yeah, you got to keep that dragon blood pure.
Yeah, well.
Can I get a point of clarification?
Yeah.
Is Patty Considine still rattling around with half an arm? No, he fully dissolved
no.
last season. I'd
Yeah.
forgotten.
Oh, so gross.
We did get
His decay.
Yeah, we got a pretty good previously on a recap of the last season, during which we got to really see him fall apart, including like not half an arm, but like the half face all caved in grossness. Yeah, so he did not make it past the first season. What?
Sorry, I'm looking at the Wikipedia page, reviewing and researching different things that I'm concerned about. And there is a surprise for Ed that I will not ruin. That you and I already went through and you did not care about, but Ed will care about.
Okay. All right. Then I won't even ask about that.
Yeah.
That
'cause I
was
don't know.
Vegas.
I know. It was. I'm like,
no
I don't know
one's
what
gonna
that
get
is.
that, John, in this room or watching us. So
Or ever. I don't even get
worry.
it.
If you're me or Ed, or apparently someone who has watched all the exact same things, and then you
Wait,
watch...
now I know what
See?
you're
Now-
referring to.
I'm the audience.
We did it.
Completely lost. So
It
we're
has
fine.
something to do with Ed. Plug your ears, warrior.
Why would you do that?
I don't know. It's
Ed,
not
plug
gonna...
your ears while your headset's in.
I just still didn't get it, so I think we're good. Okay.
I think it's fine.
So
okay.
you're recapping.
So I'm recapping-ish. Okay, so The other main character is Olivia Cook's character, which is Alicent Hightower. So she is the mother of the king who has taken over, the usurper king. So that's one of her children who... do we know if those are actually the king's kids or somebody else's kids? She's definitely having an affair, but I don't think those are his kids.
I think they are.
The king's kids, the dead king's kids.
Because they have the white Targaryen hair.
Yeah.
The Hightowers don't have that.
Which does make sense.
Right about anything.
I think you're right, because she would not have been able to have white-haired kids if she was not.
Yeah, that's a real indication.
Yeah, okay. All right, so... she is trying to keep her son on the throne, the son that is married to one of her daughters.
I did confirm that. You are right about that.
Okay. I mean, yeah. Who has a very rough go of it in this very first episode.
Does anybody not in this series?
I mean, it's
is anybody
real
really
bad.
easy breezy?
Yeah,
just
she's-
enjoying royalty.
They're not
No.
doing a fun time in history.
No.
They're doing a very tumultuous time.
Yeah. We also still have the one-eyed prince who's being a real jerk pants. So he had like a real end of last season. His dragon went a bit out of control. I mean, he was being a jerk, but then you couldn't really control the dragons, and the dragons got in a fight, and somebody got smonched. That's my...
Smonched?
Smonched is...
Swanched.
Is
squished.
yeah.
I mean, it wasn't
Chomped
like
by a
it wasn't a full
dragon.
meal. It wasn't a snack. It was somewhere between. It was a smonch.
It was a sponge. So that
I was gonna go
one-eyed guy...
munched, smashed, swanched.
Smonched.
Swanched.
Yeah, so he's still around. That's Aemon Targaryen, and he's still going to be real terrible, I feel like.
No.
Yeah, I mean, you know. And then his brother, who is the oldest, who's the king, he's really getting real bro-y. He had some like friends this first episode, and they were just like, hey, what should we do now that you're the king? You're like, oh, what's happening? So he's...
I mean, that's how it should
Yeah.
be an early entourage.
Oh my God, it is totally early
Royal
entourage.
court. Let's
I mean,
Yeah.
when you
live it up.
When you upgrade from being a lord to a king, it would make sense that you have a bunch of lords underneath you, because Matt Smith used to be a Time Lord.
Oh, I was like, they're not lords, they're princes. Oh my God. Okay.
I mean, is anybody if you don't understand that reference, it's because
I watched Doctor Who.
Thank you. Okay, there we go.
All right,
There we go. Okay. So the only other what?
Sometimes Eddie's things are like, to the audience, may we explain how his mind works to you? Because it's actually pretty smart and interesting, but if you're not connecting the dots, you have
Yeah.
no clue what the fuck is going
There's
on.
definitely some dot connecting that I
Yeah.
think is helpful, but also Ed likes to do like a reverse setup. So you get a lot of setup and then it becomes clear. So even us sitting here like, wait, where is he going? What is he doing? Ha-ha.
Matt Smith, Doctor Who, time traveler, dragon slayer. Oh my God, king now.
Time
Whoa.
Lord, not a prince. Got it. Did we do
Nailed
that
it.
justice?
Yeah.
Sort of? Not really.
I
Okay.
love it.
All right. So I think that's really all I need to say about it at this point. It's a confusing giant mess. How about that?
I was like, I don't know if
I.
I understood any of it. Okay.
No, but that's kind of how I felt while
A
watching it.
lot of really white hair.
Yeah.
People riding dragons, fighting for the throne.
Yes.
Being bitchy to each other, getting schmaunched.
Getting launched. And poor Emma Darcy's character, who is supposed to be the queen, the queen, I guess. She's supposed to be in the Iron Throne, which I guess would still be a queen. You can't,
Right,
whatever.
yeah.
So she's really in a tough spot because she knows the secret. Because her dad on his deathbed as the king was like, here's the story of ice and fire, like told her the secret,
Yes.
even though it was super vague. You're like, I don't know
And it's
that
like,
anyone would know what this means.
Not going to happen in
Yeah.
her lifetime.
This has been passed down for generations. Every one of my father's fathers knew this. But it's you. You got to watch out.
Yeah. For what? Just,
Nothing in your
watch out.
lifetime.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Or your children's lifetime.
I did love that one of her sons, the not dead son, went to the wall. So he went to the north, and there was this really cool scene where they're like at the top of the wall, and the son, he didn't really get the purpose of the wall. And one of the ancestors that we know from later down was there with him. And he basically says, like, do you think that we built a 700-foot wall to keep out wildlings? No, it's to keep out death. It's like, oh. Yeah, so that was a cool
That was
little
freaking
moment.
serious.
Yeah, it was serious. Because, you don't build a 700-foot ice wall for nothing. And also, I think they said the dragons wouldn't cross this wall, this barrier. So it's like, ooh, yeah. It's real bad on the other side.
We know that not to be true in the end. I mean, the Home Depot wall did not hold up.
All right, so I think the other thing I wanted to mention, actually, before I wrap on House of the Dragon.
Sorry, Liz. Actually, I think they got all their supplies from Snow's.
Snow, as opposed to Lowe's. Oh, my gosh. That's a good one.
Okay.
All right, so the last thing I want to mention before I move on from House of the Dragon is they have a new open, which I really liked. The motif was tapestry, and I saw a TikTok where somebody basically broke down all of the things in the tapestry because it's a super long title sequence, and it's all the Easter eggs of the different history and stories.
That's why you got to not
just
skip intro.
Yeah. But I also wouldn't have known what most of it meant unless somebody broke it down for me.
God love TikTok investigators.
Yeah. So somebody really broke it down, and that was very cool. It's the original music and this new tapestry look. All right. So that's House of Dragon. It is back for season 2. Hooray. Also confusing. All right, so next up for me was The Boys season 4.
I'm watching.
Who else is watching? You boys are both watching The Boys? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. All 4 of us. Nice. It's already off to a very
explosive
boys
start.
I was going to say explosive. Explosive.
Bloody, explosive.
Yeah, very boys. That,
I cringe usually or go at least once an episode.
Oh, there's so many in even the first episode, so many exploding heads. I was like, and it's very gruesome the way they do these things. So yeah, I enjoy it, but it's also a little gross. So big stars, of course, are Anthony Starr, who plays Homelander, who is despicable and fantastic. He's very, very awful. Mm-hmm. I don't know where this season is going, just in terms of he feels like he has too much control over people and they're too much sycophants. So he wants this very smart person on the team who is turning
honesty. Yeah.
Yeah. But also she's immediately super diabolical.
Oh, manipulative.
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And just, no moral compass. Just because she's smart doesn't mean she's good. Yeah. No. I mean, why would she be good? This is the
John,
boys.
you think she's good?
I mean, maybe it'll be better for the masses. Just kill a few people. No big deal.
Yeah.
Oh. Yep.
So, and our main boy, Billy Butcher.
The best.
Yeah. Carl Urban, he's apparently, not doing super good because he did that temp V and basically broke his brain. And so he's maybe going to die. I don't know where this is going to go.
The series would be very depleted without his presence.
Yeah.
Although his hard C words, his hard F words.
Oh, yeah. Do you find him extremely hard to understand? His accent is so thick.
I mean, I have subtitles on during this entire thing.
That's
so,
smart.
I mean, and they're bleeping out the subtitles because there's so many bad words in his dialogue. It's
really? Oh my God, that's hysterical. They don't print the bad words?
The C word might be C dot dot dot.
You should be able to opt into the adult subtitles. No, just give me the F-bombs and the S's.
Yeah.
Just drop them all. Put them
Oh my God,
I'll
that's
have to
so funny.
watch it more carefully, but I feel like maybe it's not all typed out. Yeah.
Interesting. I wouldn't have thought that. Okay.
But he's in jeopardy. You're in trouble, girl, this season.
Oh, yeah. He's not doing good. We'll see where he ends up. But also, Jack Quaid, who plays our character Huey, very altruistic and has a good heart and doesn't love killing.
But loves Billy Joel.
The whole series started with him, really, because his spoiler alert, we're 4 seasons in, but his girlfriend basically gets killed by one of the Soups. Not in a malicious way, but just because in some ways they're careless with their powers.
Oh, extremely, yeah.
And it's explosive and bloody, and that sets him off on a quest as one of the boys to take down the Soups. And he feels a lot of conflict quite often.
Yes.
And mainly because he falls in love with
a Soup, Starlight, played by Annie Moriarty, who is Annie January. So now she's trying to get away from her Starlight persona and just be a person who has superpowers.
Because a lot of things have happened, so the public is starting to question the Soups and their intentions, and mostly on Homelander.
And weirdly, no one's really figured out that Vought's the problem.
Yeah.
Freaking Amazon. I mean Vought.
Oh, how dare you. So in this season, we're really dealing with the outing of particularly Homelander being just extremely violent in public, which had not really been the case before. People didn't realize, but now he's like killed people publicly.
Yeah.
And there's like a split in terms of people supporting him and people not supporting him, and that's kind of where Starlight has almost like the other side politically against him. So that's kind of what's going on at this point.
If you've not watched The Boys and you sort of like dark humor, superhero genre, it is shocking. There are definite moments you are like, oh, but it's well worth a watch. And you're a couple seasons in, so there's a lot of material to dig into.
Yeah.
And really, Homelander and the Butcher are such fabulous lead characters.
Yeah. We didn't ever talk about Gen V. When it was out, Gen V, which is a spin-off, it's about younger soups at basically a university getting trained up to maybe be
superhero
soups.
camp.
Yeah. But also still very dark. I thought it was a really good show. You didn't like it?
I didn't love it. I liked it, but it does. I mean, The Boys is far superior to me.
Interesting.
I talked about this as this new season of The Boys was coming up with Ed, and I was like, I really did love Gen V, but I'm not sure if I love it more than The Boys, but also it's because The Boys set me up for this.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Interesting. I felt Gen V was more fully formed because it had more going on in terms of trying to figure out what to do with these young people and their powers. So not just like the vendetta of trying to pull down the soups who are already on this pedestal and super corrupt and terrible, but it's this other part of the story of what's going on with them, and then also the diabolical science that's going on in the background, which I think is going to come up in this season of The Boys. They've already referred to it a little bit.
It might just be my, as well established on this podcast, my love of the teenage character typically.
Oh, yeah.
This was an exception for me.
Know.
They're
Very
20s-ish, too.
I know, but so normally I don't want to deal with the teen characters, and I really avoid them. But this one, for some reason, just didn't quite feel that way.
Yeah.
I agree.
I mean, the other thing that people need to know if they've never watched The Boys is super violent and also graphic sexual content, usually not in a sexy, fun way, like in a real surprising way.
You will jump. I jump usually at least once, if not 2 or 3 times an episode.
Yeah. There was a selfie in this first episode.
Oh, God.
Which my husband was like, oh, that was a belly button. And I was like, honey, it's The Boys. It was not a belly button. And that's all I'll say.
Leave it to your imagination, people.
I mean, the season or series recap going into the season was almost all just terrible, terrible, graphic, violent, or whatever moments. It was rough.
Yeah, I did. Watching it, I was also like, oh my God, I barely remember any of this. It sort of goes back to Ed's thing of like, a lot of times, if you have the time, you probably should rewatch all of the seasons leading up to a new season, but it's just so much.
Yeah.
I need almost like a more comprehensive previously on. Like, don't give me 3 minutes. Give me 25 minutes.
It
like,
probably
really
does
tell me.
exist on YouTube.
You know what? You're right.
So.
People do that, which is very
Find
smart.
it, people.
I know.
All right, so The Boys.
Okay, so The Boys. Now this, my last thing, is really in a different category altogether. So
Shifting gears.
Shifting major gears. I'm going to talk about Inside Out.
Oh.
The Pixar movie. So Inside Out 2 has just come out, and surprise, Katherine actually went to the theater and saw it. Now, this is how it all went down. My son, who is 21 and has autism, is part of a social group of 6 young men in their early 20s with autism, and they were doing an outing to go and see Inside Out 2. So they had watched as a group the first movie, Inside Out 1, as sort of a prep thing, and they were discussing emotions, and by that I mean the facilitator of the group was using the movie to talk about emotions and kind of use it as a teaching tool and discussion, starter to whatever extent these young men could talk about their emotions or learn about their emotions, which I thought was really smart. So with Adam, I sat down, and he normally won't watch a whole movie. He will go to a movie, eat the popcorn, and then as soon as the popcorn is done, he gets very fidgety and wants to look at his phone and wants to leave because he's not a lot of times picking up on the story. So he's not really engaged enough to really pay attention. So I didn't know how well it would go to watch Inside Out at home, but I was like, okay. So we fired it up on Disney Plus, and he sat there and watched the whole thing with me. It was amazing. And
So this is the second time of watching the first one.
Yes, correct.
Group watching, solo watching.
Yes. So when I would pause it and occasionally be like, oh, and I'd point things out and whatever, but not a lot. I just really tried to let him watch it. And then this morning, took him to meet the group at the theater. And I had told his facilitator who runs this group, I'm like, I don't want him to know that I'm here, but I don't want to go all the way home. And I want to also watch the movie so I can talk about it with him later. Even if he doesn't have a lot to talk to me about, it'll be something that we have in common and I'll know the story and blah, blah, blah. So I bought a ticket in the very last row on the corner so I could kind of hide, watch them go in, and then I snuck in the back. And Adam sat there and watched the whole movie, which was incredible. I mean, Pixar, they really know what they're doing.
This is one of their better ones.
Yeah, very moving, and an expansion on the idea of both it was interesting because the facilitator, I talked to him about it after, he was talking about the difference between feelings and emotions, which I hadn't really thought about it that way. So he said, like, the first one was really about the feelings. And this second one, he likes to explain it that these are the emotions, which are like how your body reacts to your feelings. So it's like, it's the next layer. It's obviously the next layer and an expansion of these feelings, but he was kind of making it two different categories.
Distinction between the two. Okay.
Just as a way to talk about it, which I thought was really interesting. So in the first one, we have Amy Poehler as Joy, who is back, who is fantastic, very, very up and wonderful, but then of course has some moments where she realizes that things are difficult and some sadder moments for her and a great performance. Then we have Phyllis Smith, who is playing Sadness, who is unbelievable. I love her so much. She just, she breaks your heart, but she's so funny and she's just perfection. Just perfection. Then Mindy Kaling, who played Disgust in the first one, was great. She is not in the second one. We have a different voice actress, Liza Lapira. She's very good. And it's not that I didn't realize that it was Mindy Kaling. It just didn't take me out of it. I'm like, very similar.
Only because probably you just rewatched it, the first
I think it
one.
was so fresh.
Otherwise,
I
don't think you'd probably know.
And they did a similar thing with Fear, who in the first one was Bill Hader, and in this one is Tony Hale. And a great character, very fun, always worried about stuff.
I did feel like Tony Hale really gave it more of his own spin, though.
Yeah, it was a little bit different. You're absolutely right about that. But it felt enough that you didn't feel like, they've completely changed Fear.
It was enjoyable, for sure.
Yeah, he was definitely... Wait a minute. Did I just realize that you have seen 2?
Did you ask me?
John!
Why is it a mystery? Why did I pull it out of you? Oh, my gosh.
I mean,
Wait. We haven't gotten to him yet. So he did say, before we do a pre-prep, and we usually all talk about what we've seen, but he said 2 movies and didn't tell us the movies. So what has been revealed?
Incorrect.
So
you weren't even going to discuss this?
I knew I was going to weigh in. I mean, it's not going to be a Katherine monologue.
All right. Okay.
But I would have looped you in earlier if I'd realized that you'd seen it.
He wanted it fresh and organic.
Look, you have to understand from context.
Oh, my God. What a turd. You're so funny. Okay. All right. So the new... What?
What a turd. That might be an accurate descriptor, John, sometimes.
That's turd. What he does, though.
He says that. Is that one of the emotions?
Is that, yeah.
Turd.
Was that your Phyllis Smith? I'm so sad Katherine called me a turd.
Honestly, I thought it was another clue, but I didn't get a chance to say it. The feelings versus emotion thing, I mean, it was interesting because it's not a problem with the second one, but it was like, you're saying that anxiety is an equal level emotion or representative as joy or sadness. And I was like, I don't know that I believe that. But they didn't qualify them in 2 groups. But for yourself to qualify them makes sense. It's fine.
It's interesting because it definitely, the way that the movie is set up is it hinges on puberty. She's 13, and it's sort of like the explosion of this next level of...
That was a pretty fun moment and situation, and there were a lot of ways that it made sense, I thought.
Yeah, which the only funny thing that was a little unrealistic was like puberty. in one day. It's like an explosion, which was kind of funny.
But it was because then they would do some recap stuff. They were like, well, there were clues. But
yeah.
Then all of a sudden, it was overnight.
It was overnight. Literally overnight. We also have Louis Black back as Anger, who is, of course, fantastic.
Thank you, San Francisco. You ruined pizza.
I mean, just bad. He's so good. Yeah, so he's great in this big part. As John says, they bring in this whole other crew of emotions or feelings or whatever you want to refer to them as. The main one being anxiety, played by Maya Hawke, or voiced by Maya Hawke. And it's interesting just because I know from my daughter, who has anxiety issues, where you're like, wow, yeah, anxiety really, they represented it at one point as almost like a tornado that could not get stopped. Like, wow, yeah, because it can be so separate from what's going on, and also like that it has good intentions and it's trying to do things and then it just can spin out of control. I thought it was really well represented.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it was tough to watch and tough to see, like, oh, someone losing control. And look, both Inside Outs is like, there are moments where, not out of the box, but like, oh, this person is losing control of all their emotions, or, oh, now they have no emotions or something. So it was tough to watch that happen.
Yeah, they did a really good job. I mean, I don't know what Adam got out of it, but I thought it represented emotions really well in terms of how they're impacting and also showing like how it's interacting with her life. I hope that he got a lot out of it.
Well, he sat through the whole movie, which he
sat through
typically
the whole movie.
does not do. Did he even have popcorn?
He did not have popcorn.
Maybe that is the trigger. Stop giving him popcorn.
I agree.
He's sitting there waiting for the popcorn to come.
Eric will not agree.
Okay.
Yeah. My husband definitely feels like, no, you get popcorn at the movies.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see.
It's not a bizarre theory, but okay. But he sat there the whole time.
Yeah, he did great. He did really, really great. It was funny to be like, a bunch of rows behind him and just kind of looking at the back of his head and just, he seemed super engaged. I thought it was amazing. Okay, so the other new emotions that we need to acknowledge are envy, played by Iowa Adebri, and then also ennui, and then one of my favorite.
Wait, what's ennui?
Ennui, like not wanting to do anything.
Are
She has
you
a
for
French
real,
accent.
Katherine?
It's so funny. What?
It is the boredom.
Oh, it is the boredom.
Oh, so it's the boredom.
Yeah. So it's very like teenage.
Oh,
Do you want to
God.
do this?
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm bored.
Yeah. She was very good. I liked her.
Ooh, that is great. Okay.
And then another new one who is just a little teeny, almost like cameo, is Nostalgia, voiced by June Squibb, which was delightful. Very funny.
Oh, that's
She comes in
brilliant.
and she's like, what about this? And they're like, from 30 seconds ago, you're not due for 10 years. Get back in the closet. It was really cute.
Okay.
And then
Triple Denkum, it's all delicious.
we did get at least two of those.
Nice.
Yeah, it was great. So also we got recurrences from the first one. We got Paula Poundstone, Paula Pell, Bobby Moynihan, John Ratzenberger.
Oh, he's always in there.
I know. And then we had some new ones. One of my faves, Ron Funches, was in there
Oh, I
as
love
like
this.
a kid's cartoon character, which was very funny. It was sort of like Dora the Explorer because he didn't have a backpack. He had like a fanny pack, like a front pouchy. And that was from Saturday Night Live, James Austin Johnson, and was a very funny character, this pouchy character. So, I mean, the only one, particularly because I had just watched the first movie, and spoiler from the first movie, Bing Bong does not make it out. So,
I was like, how is he there?
no, I know
He
he's
should
not.
be. I love Bing Bong so
I know. Richard Kind voicing Bing Bong. Bing Bong. So anyway, that was a sad realization that when I was looking through the list of recurring characters, I was like, oh, you can't get Bing Bong back because Bing Bong is gone. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it was neat. I liked it, and I liked the idea of now we're creating a sense of self. That was sort of the underlying thing. So instead of just your feeling islands, which was the first movie, or right? Isn't that what it was called? Or like your core memories and your islands of whatever. But now it's realizing that you develop beliefs and beliefs about yourself, and that colors how you interact with the world. It was a good story. And I did ask Adam afterwards, I'm like, well, what sport does she play? What sport does Riley play? And he was like, hockey. I'm like,
Oh, okay, so he's really
"Great."
watching.
He was taking it in. There's a lot of really good hockey animation because look, it's fun because it's a much bigger part of the story. She goes to a hockey camp and there's she's trying to get in with the cool hockey players, and envy plays a part in that, and definitely anxiety of wanting to be liked, and yeah, it was good.
I don't know if I could watch it. It sounds like it would give me anxiety because I'm kind of in the throes of this right now. A lot of teenage stuff. Like last night, it was like he's got his neighborhood boys, and it was like, "Where are you? Come back home." I'm right outside. I think I woke up at like 1:15. I'm like, "Where are you?" I'm just out front talking. I'm like, "Get in the house!" But then he comes in. He's like, "Oh my gosh, you're having a real serious conversation, and you like ruined it." And,
Oh, geez.
So I'm like, "Do I want to watch?"
I think you
Maybe
can still
it'll be
watch
insightful, John.
Liz,
You can handle it.
it. Yeah.
the tone that you were just using. I don't remember the character's name, but in Riley's head in the first one, I would die for you, Riley. I would die
Oh
for you.
yeah.
Is he in it? Is he in
No,
it?
he's not.
Oh,
the
he died for
imaginary
Riley
boyfriend.
then. Yeah.
And is that fantasy? What is it called, John? Like Imaginary Land, or I forget what. It might just be Imagination Land.
But it's unrelated to where you're going, which was the vault or her Mount Crushmore. Those are the two places.
Oh, I like
Yeah.
that name, Mount Crushmore.
All of that stuff is so creative. But yeah, Imaginary Land also has changed a lot because she's grown up. So, and that initial imaginary crush was not in it. Yeah,
Now,
sorry.
I got
He
one.
was on Mount Crushmore.
Obviously, he's
Oh,
he's carved
well,
into
he was
Mount Crushmore.
No. The game character was on Mount Crushmore. Was that boyfriend on there too?
There was more than one person on Mount Crushmore.
Okay, but I forgot who was on Mount Crushmore. All right, yes, Eddie.
I was just going to say, well, I'm obviously going to watch this eventually, but are there more than one mode of transportation for ideas to get around now instead of just the younger single train of thought that you might find yourself on?
There wasn't really a train of thought. There were just a lot more tubes going on. All right. And of course, there's a big trek that's happening that doesn't go well. Because they have to, it's a little bit not formulaic, but they have to go and get something that is very far away.
The Parade of Future Careers.
That was
There were
great.
so many
I
fun
love that
moments.
one. Yeah, there was a lot of really fun moments.
Ooh, I want to see it. Okay.
It's really, really good. It's really, really good. And again, I'm just so happy that Adam
yeah.
really seemed to enjoy it and forced me to go out to the theater to watch it too. So that was cool. All right. Okay, so that's it for me. Liz, you want to go?
Well, I forgot I watched this when you were talking about emotions. It made me think of this real asshole that I watched his movie about. Godzilla -1. I mean, what an effing jerk. So, 2-second recap. It picks up basically the end of the Second World War in Japan, and there is a deserter kamikaze flight pilot who, from really PTSD, like he can't do it, right? Mm-hmm. But it's really like the last day of the war. So, it's like, what the hell? I don't want to do it. So he basically goes into what would be a repair station on an island, and they kind of figure out nothing's wrong with your plane. What are you doing here? And while they're all contemplating, this deserter, that comes out of the freaking forest and just stops everybody. He's pissed about the war. I don't even know. And he's not that big. But the only two survivors is the kamikaze flight pilot and the head, basically, I want to say, flight engineer repair guy who knows he's a deserter. So now you go back to Japan that has been decimated by World War II. And he's got to recreate his life, this deserter plagued by guilt. And he finds a woman who has found a baby, and they kind of make a faux house family together, but they're not together because it's like unrequited feelings and love, and he doesn't deserve love because of how he abandoned his troops and all these.
My.
And of course, there's nothing basically left here, but here comes this asshole Godzilla again. And he got to damage this whole town and take down everybody. It almost looks like the old school,
stop motion. Yeah.
So it's like one big foot squashing the little villages
does
barely.
he have like a magnet on him that's like drawing Godzilla to him? What is happening?
I don't know why they don't really get into it. This is almost pre-Godzilla, like in the sense of like there's nothing to combat him. They don't even know how they're going to take him down. He regenerates. It's all this stuff.
What a nightmare.
No, he
And-
thought he was. It's like a King Kong situation where he's like, "Are these flies? Get out of here, flies!"
Kind of,
So
but
it's like
stay
a
on
Mothra
the ocean
situation.
or
He's like,
stay on
I
the-
saw that Mothra guy. I'm gonna go get him.
But stay on the ocean. Stay on your own island. Why are you bothering people? They're not bothering you. And, really it's an overall story of this kamikaze's internal guilt that is eating him alive, that he has to revenge the men that he feels he abandoned, and how
Revenge or avenge?
Avenge. He has to avenge the men he abandoned. And he's basically going to solo, which then you also learn you have to rely on people to be able to take down Godzilla. It was a budget. This is what you tell the big studios. It was a budget of like total under something like with marketing, with everything, like under $30 million or something. And it's voiceovered as well. So you're watching as an American and it's like, it feels like, a little like, oh, okay.
What did they win an Academy Award for?
Special effects.
I mean, it was reviewed very well. People
is-
did like it a lot.
You did let me finish. It's fantastic.
Oh. Just that Godzilla is a jerk.
He's
That's the
such a
main-
jerk. You're like, what? Stay away from this village that's already destroyed. But it's a whole hero arc that has to happen for your lead character to basically believe in himself and love again.
Oh.
And I mean, we watched as a family and totally enjoyed it. So it may end up making like $100 million plus or something like that. So on such a teeny budget, real, not CGI special effects, so well done, old school, but like you just like, because there's been a pivot recently in more modern Godzillas that we are to learn his inside out of him. Maybe he's tortured. Maybe he's been misunderstood. I'm like,
Well, you have to remember there's the American Godzilla series where he's protecting us from this other
Right.
realm, apparently.
Right.
Versus the Japanese Godzilla movies, which I don't know.
they should hate him because seriously.
Just stomping on things for no good reason.
And there's one thing, I'll just end on this. There's this one where it's like the signal that he's coming are these fish that float to the surface. Now, at first, you won't see it now, but I have to say it. It looks like a bunch of floating penises. You are like, what is happening? And we could not figure it out. And then Mark goes, oh, this was what happened because my husband likes to fish. Their bladders, because they were raised too quickly, because Godzilla swimming by and his methane or whatever is making the fish go, what? And they pop their bladder out of their mouth and sink to the surface. It was like, what? Who did the research on that and decided like that's what it's going to look like down there? So it is just, I mean, it's a fun ride. And I'm only paralleling him being like, all anger, Lewis, black. Like he just needs, he needs to get in check with his other emotions. So that is Godzilla -1, available on Netflix. Very fun.
So Godzilla probably needs some therapy is really what it is.
No, it might be just that all his emotions all have that fire head.
Oh,
Yes.
Or what we are missing from all these Godzilla movies is when we're watching the humans, he's off someplace kicking and just so sad. Why did I make a mess of that town? Ugh.
Regret.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
Maybe.
I have other feelings, people.
He is just,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's very well done. Even when he does his big like chunk, 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 and here comes the big laser out of his mouth, and it's gonna break everything, make atomic bombs everywhere. It is just like he's just insane, and he somehow gets bigger and bigger and bigger, so more diabolical. So, and then speaking of monsters, I'll parallel to another Netflix show I watched, which was Eric on Netflix.
Oh.
Recommended by our sister Virginia, which I never would have thought this was her vibe or tone, or I just would not have thought this because it's basically set in the 1980s in New York, and it's a story of a young boy, Edgar, going missing. And it's done through the lens of both the police department and the corruptions happening there and overlapped by missing boys in the 1980s and a black child versus a white child, what is prioritized in the police department.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then the fathers, and this is where you go, okay, childhood trauma is generational. So the father, Vincent, because they reference Henson. So you're like, oh, this must have been like,
like Jim Henson.
yeah. So he's a puppeteer on a children's show, and that's how it starts off.
Sort of like a
Sesame Street is what we would get, because obviously we know Jim Henson and the Muppets, they reference them as like, you know, the pinnacle. So this I would assume is sort of like that is Sesame Street. And the father is the genius who creates most of the characters and the voices, but is tortured. Alcoholism for sure, a volatile marriage, and his relationship to his own parents, and what was probably early medicated, I would say, mental issues, and how his family dealt with it. So when the son goes missing, you know, I was like, oh gosh, just as a mother, I mean, anybody can relate. You're like, this, I don't know if I can watch this. This is really hard to watch.
I'll say, I did watch half of the first episode, and I was like, I don't know if I can watch this.
Right.
So I had to pause. So I'm intrigued to hear.
The only reason why I was like, well, okay, Virginia watched it.
Yeah, Ginny watched it. So that's interesting.
She's not into trauma TV.
She is watching another show she was just telling me about that was incredibly surprising.
Okay.
Ooh,
so
I want to hear about that.
I want to say the lead actors, so Benedict Cumberbatch plays Vincent, the lead puppeteer and the father, and Gabby Hoffman plays his wife. She is fantastic. She's sort of had a comeback. You may have known her as a childhood actress from Field of Greens. Field of Greens, that's like a drink I just made up. Field of Dreams. Field of Dreams and other ones. But then Girls on HBO, she started to have cameos on that. People started to go like, she's really talented. She is excellent in this. But they are such a combative couple. And this is before cell phones. So, you know, it's like to go find a lost child in New York is like passing out flyers, staying by your phone, dealing with the police department. There's a low level of anxiety throughout it. You're just like, how would you ever find him?
Yeah.
How'd you ever find him?
Yeah.
And the lead detective on the case is McKinley Bletcher. That's the actor. And he does a storyline that of the 80s in New York. It's the AIDS crisis and being homosexual and trying to hide that, especially in an NYPD station, and what that means as a detective. So many backstories, sub-stories, so layered, so good, led by Benedict Cumberbatch. He's just fantastic. In order to find his son, he has to create a monster that his son had drawn. And he feels like if I create this monster and have him on the show, my son Edgar will see it and then come back. Now, part of that is his delusion of alcoholism and his own childhood trauma. But I guess the childhood trauma part of it was he would talk to his imaginary character. So now this character that his son drew comes up and is now Eric, basically his partner through this journey.
Oh, wow.
So it is layered. It is so fascinating. It is so well done. And I will just say for you, it ends on a good note. So just you can watch it without being like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. But not for everybody. Humanity is complicated. And I think this tells a true story of it that, you know, it doesn't end all perfectly for everybody. But I will say the narrative of the son, which, you know, I almost couldn't even watch it thinking like, is this kid dead? There are moments that are very scary with him, but that ends up okay in the end. But different. Everybody's changed in the end. Some for the better, some for the worse. John Folger, he's the co-producer of the children's show. And David Denman also plays the lead captain in the police department. And the police corruption story is heartbreaking, but, you know, it's so sort of telling of the time and undercover cops and what was happening in the gay culture in nightclubs and things like that. So like I said, extremely layered, so fascinating.
Yeah, really
They do a
complex.
fantastic job. It's basically, it's not based on a real life story, but the showrunner, Abby Morgan, who created it, based it on disappearance of boys in the 80s, the AIDS crisis in the 80s, all these layers, okay? And then it's directed by Lucy Forbes and producer also Holly Pullinger. So all that, I'm like, yay, women.
That's a lot of
running
women.
this.
Awesome.
And like I said, so creative. Fantastic acting ensemble.
I'm going to revisit it.
You
Yeah.
should.
Okay.
I can understand. That's what I'm telling people. I understand your anxiety of why you're like, I mean, I lost my son for one time for 1 hour, and it can still, if I go there, it almost give me PTSD. There are moments I'm like, how are they not even freaking out more?
Yeah.
So I can only say, like, you just know that vertical, although very, very interesting and not immediately resolved by any means until the last episode, that element will be okay. But other people, you know, there are elements of the story that maybe don't work out as well. So then I needed some Triumph, basically palate cleanser.
Yeah.
And we're about to have the Tour de France in Paris along with the Olympics. And I kind of wonder, well, how's that going to impact it? And they, for the first time in the Tour de France history, are not going to end the Tour de France after its 3 weeks in Paris because of the Olympics.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Did they just line up exactly time-wise? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, they basically overlap, which is a real bummer, but I don't agree with it because I think the Tour de France has the history, like they need to make that work. They do the schedule Olympics, figure out,
it.
divert
Something.
it. And I always love the Tour de France because we were in Europe and they literally, you watch a TV show of the peloton going by, which is the group of riders, because the camera can absorb it in a time that you can basically contextually take it in. But in real life, in person, it goes by like, shoo, 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 shoo. I mean, we were like, where are we going to watch the Tour de France? Yeah. Oh, that was it? Like, that's it. It goes by so incredibly fast. So there is an excellent documentary series. There's 2 seasons of it on Netflix, Tour de France Unchained. Okay?
Unchained. Oh, okay.
So they follow the many teams because I always love the personality profiles on sports shows, especially during the Olympics.
Yeah,
and
you
it's
do.
Basically, they'll just zero in on a rider. And as a producer, your mind go, oh, they might have shot this after, realizing that this guy who did a breakaway, before this, he was just in the peloton. He wasn't the lead rider because each team has a lead rider that is basically pushed up in the time because it's all timing how you win the whole Tour de France. You can win stages. It's over 3 weeks long. It's like something like 2,000 miles. So like each day they're averaging about 100 miles.
Oh, geez.
Up insane mountains on cobble streets I mean, it's just incredible. But on each team, they have different riders with different skill sets. But there is one lead captain that's who they're pushing to basically get on the podium, take one of the 3 spots. And they don't win every stage, and they don't need to. It's all about time trials. And it's like, what time did you finish in every day? So they're always pushing these guys to have great times. So there might be a guy that all of a sudden wins a stage that never was predicted to. No one thought he would. And so then as a documentary person, you're going to go back like, well, now I need to know who the hell he is.
Yeah,
and
we need you to do the backstory on that dude.
and you wouldn't have done it before. So, one of the guys said it's cruel. The Tour de France is cruel. And it really is because, this season started off with like the lone basically American team that's left because, we used to be very present there with previous, I'm not going to say his name, but dominating cyclists. And it's taken us a long time to come back. And they bet all their cards on this one lead captain rider. And he basically falls the first day and knocks out his shoulder, and that's it. You're just like, oh my gosh. So a lot of heartbreak, a lot of triumph. And the reason why I like it is because there's just the triumph elements. There's cyclists, they're in the peloton, they're on that team. Then there's the guys in the cars. There's the guys back at the camp. When any of their guys win a stage, the level of emotions you see from full-grown men is so fantastic. You just don't normally see that. And the camaraderie and the team support and just the heartbreak of when someone doesn't meet their expectations, it's just fantastic. And there are guys that dominate, and it's pretty much predicted that there's usually 1 or 2 or 3 guys that are going to win it all. I don't want to spoil it for you, but the last 2 years have been dominated by one dude, and they even address, like, is this suspicious? But then I start to question just the evolution of who we are as humans, of the idea of like breaking the how fast to run a mile, how fast Katie Ledecky is her name, the swimmer, like what we're accomplishing as humans. We want to cast doubt when someone basically smashes our expectations. And you hope that that's not the truth. You hope it's more like, wow, he's just that genetic mix that somehow or another he's able to pull it off. And now even the next generation, because every generation is usually a step up from the previous in almost every sport.
Yeah.
So you have a Usain Bolt, you just have people, you have a Michael Phelps, you just have someone you go like, this doesn't seem humanly possible. Then 2 years later, there's 4 Michael Phelps equivalents. So I'm hoping that the guy that seems very genuine, that has been won the last 2 years, is capable of all this. So it's coming up. You can watch the series to prep yourself. Europe goes absolutely crazy over this. It's so phenomenal to watch. So it's Tour de France Unchained on Netflix.
Tour de France Unchained.
Yes.
All right. Awesome. Before you move on, is the other one also Tour de France related? Didn't you have a second documentary?
I did. It's zeroing in on Mark Cavendish. Mark Cavendish, never enough, who is considered the greatest sprinter ever. And there is a documentary about him. And actually, I will say, this all ties into everything I talked about, even back to Godzilla.
Ooh.
Because
okay.
Cavendish, being the best in his sport, really gets knocked down. And through that, has to face and overcome a mental illness battle of
geez.
basically depression, Epstein-Barr, and really doesn't seem like he's going to come back from it. And it's such a story of triumph that you really root for him when it really doesn't seem like he's ever going to get back on the tour, much less a bicycle. So I'm obsessed with Tour de France.
I guess.
And everything to do with it. So if there's anything you guys want to recommend, I will watch it. So Ethan's like, another thing with bicycle riders. Why are you so into these guys? And I'm like, it's not them. It's the overcoming. It's the triumph. I'm like, and I rode a 50-mile bicycle ride one time, so I can relate to the pain they're enduring. No.
You do love a sports story, though.
Oh, God,
I mean, that's one of your things.
Love it.
Yeah.
I do. So, yes. So that was also on Netflix, Mark Cavendish.
And that's just a single movie, not a series.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
I mean,
All right.
Mark Cavendish, never enough.
And that also tells you the mentality. Also, you could relate back to Godzilla. That effort never gave up. He really wanted to take down all of Japan. And
he was a real jerk.
Cavendish wants to take down all of Tour de France.
All right.
Yes, there you go.
Okay, well, on Tour de France, but on a totally different note, the only reference I have for Tour de France, other than we were there when it happened one year, was the Andy Samberg comic fake documentary, Tour de Pharmacy. Oh my God, that is the funniest movie. It's a short fake documentary. I think it's maybe an hour. I don't even know if it's a full
It's pretty
length.
brilliant,
It's
yeah.
really brilliant. So yeah, if you want to watch serious Tour de France stuff, great. And then if you want to watch jokey Tour de France stuff, then you've got Tour de Pharmacy.
And if you are not interested in the French part, but you do like the bicycle part, I recommend American Flyers from 1985
It is
with Kevin Costner,
so good.
David Marshall Grant, and Ray Don Chong. I think it needs a sequel. 40 years later, what are they still doing?
Yeah.
I think you should just watch Breaking Away.
Oh my God, Breaking Away. Are you kidding me? Breaking Away is just phenomenal. Phenomenal.
Okay, so we've got Breaking Away. We've got the Kevin Costner.
American Flyers.
Now we've got Andy Samberg's Tour de Pharmacy. And then you can take in the real documentary, My Tour de France Unchained.
It sounds like a really
God.
fun whole week.
That is your
And,
assignment before the actual Tour de France starts in like late June. And you're all prepped because they do air it here in the United States at horrible times, though. It's like a 4
Well,
a.m.
because
in the
it's probably
morning.
like live, so it's off by
Yes,
12 hours or 10 hours
yeah.
or something.
But
Yeah.
now I like know all their names, and I'm like, oh, Oot did not win the speed trial. Oh my God. Tebow did not get up the mountain. Like, I know all of them now. Awesome.
Unfortunately, it may start before you listen to this episode. So.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, so you ought to be on it already.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right. Ed, you're up.
I have a bunch of stuff to tell you about this week. I had a couple quick ones that I wanted to call out because you guys are a little bit on a scary or weird, mean, gross movie tack. I am not into scary movies usually, but I follow this TikToker, Justin Tate, and he's got some really funny bits. And, he got excited because he was cast in a full-length feature movie, and he was promoting it. I'm like, sure. $10 on Apple TV, support, let's go, let's watch it. The director's also in it, and he's like the villain.
Oh.
Justin's character is murderous. So
What's the name of this movie?
It's called The Bad Shepherd.
The Bad Shepherd.
And it's like
Okay.
it's a small budget, small feature, whatever. I just wanted to give it a shout. I bought a copy of it, I watched it, and I enjoyed you, Justin. Good job.
Nice.
So then I had some other short shout outs. One was, I'm a big fan of the Marvel stuff and animated stuff, so I watched X-Men 97.
Oh.
Although I didn't do what I usually do and watch all of the previous animated series of X-Men, because I also never watched that. I wasn't really into the cartoons of those back in the day. I wasn't into the comic books, and they heavily related to those two. Now that there's all these movies to be into, they took the style and look of the original 97 animation, continued the story from where it left off in that, but then updated how they were telling the story. And I mean, to some degree, updated how they were telling the story. So I'd also recommend that. It's great, fun Marvel stuff. There's lots of references that you might catch to the movies that you like, and there you go. So
Nice.
An X-Men entry into the universe. And then the last thing that I wanted to throw out quickly was a recommendation that Liz made to watch J-Lo's new movie, Atlas.
Oh, right.
Why did you need to? I reenacted the entire movie.
really did.
But
You
I
really
kind of
did.
wanted to see how the sci-fi looked and if I liked the special effects, and they didn't really knock it out of the park for me, which I already had the expectations that this movie wasn't going to be amazing. But then having had your recommendation, I'm like, okay, so I do have an idea, and I want to watch it through so I don't spoil if I don't think this helped it at all. So as an experiment, I watched Atlas all the way through. You were not wrong. It was a rough go. You really had to get on board for everything she was doing. The lip quiver. I just didn't buy. I didn't buy the lip quiver from the analyst. However, I thought one of the problems that Liz has had sometimes where it's like, yeah, the dub of this is freaking terrible and I couldn't get back to the original language. I'm like, J-Lo should have been cast as the Spanish-speaking version of herself, but she wasn't, and so then I got a really slightly different but also better performance for that character in Spanish, and then put the subtitles on, and the special effects were still bad.
What?
So
Wait, so you watched it with the Spanish dub, but with subtitles on?
So that I could understand what they were saying. She's just basically by herself with a bunch of CG characters and an AI robot.
True.
And so all of that was just translated perfectly. A different guy doing the exact same performance. All the computers made sense. Everything worked, and you just weren't worried that I know that she is not speaking Spanish, but the lady who's doing that voice is doing a much better job giving the emotions and not getting distracted by like a rom-commy love type of, I have too much love for you, J-Lo. I didn't believe you were very sciencey, and this helped some.
You couldn't get away from the J-Lo of the J-Lo.
Yes.
So this helped separate it.
Yes, it did a lot. So anyways, I'd recommend Atlas, but also pick a language. Don't get stuck on your own language. Experiment.
Oh my God.
That is a funny fix.
Wow.
But it kind of worked. All right. So the real stuff that I wanted to bring to the podcast was I watched the feature Ricky Stanicky on Prime.
Oh, okay.
With John Cena as the kind of main character, Ricky Stanicky. And if you don't know the plot of Ricky Stanicky, that is fun to say.
Ricky Stanicky?
Yeah, it's two kind of idiot kids who make up a fake friend to get away with shit as kids. And then they continue on for the entire rest of their lives until they're their mid-40s and have careers that might implode if they keep using this dumb excuse. Andrew Santino, who I've reviewed a comedy special of his before, he's great. Between him and Zac Efron as the two main idiot friends who've made up this character, they just paint themselves directly into the biggest corner that they can find.
Perfect.
Fantastic. Ooh. That's the plot you want. And oh my goodness, John Cena's character that he's playing is just a wild character. It is doing some very ridiculous stuff. And then you're on board for this being a very funny comedy. I didn't realize going into this that it was directed by Peter Farrelly, one of my faves, Farrelly Brothers directing stuff. So that makes a lot more sense that it was, much more shticky and bits and pratfalls, and you've got someone like John Cena who's willing to do hilarious jokes and go in full makeup and dress as Britney Spears. Then you do that. You put that in a movie because it's pretty funny.
I did like the conceit that he is a very serious actor and they hire him to play Ricky Stanicky, this fake friend of theirs, to get them out of this lie that they've been telling for years. And he's taking it so seriously. That is a great setup.
Yeah, although if you do watch the movie, you'll find out it's less that he's a very serious actor. He is. He's just not getting the parts. So the things that he's done to make the ends meet, so to speak, in the meantime.
Right.
Oh, boy.
The ends meet. Ooh, that was a good innuendo.
Ooh, okay. Maybe I don't want to know.
I mean, for Godzilla, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so between that movie, which I recommend on Prime, I had another thing that I wanted to bring, another Rick thing. Although this one's slightly larger, more stuff to watch, and insanely deep levels of other things that you can get out of watching Rick and Morty.
Because Ricky Stanicky and now Rick and Morty. Got it.
Ricky, not Stanicky. If you haven't watched that, it's kind of in the boys level of crass humor and things blowing up. Every episode, people are dying. Whatever, but there's multi-universes. There's so many universes. There's clones of entire versions of the family that, yes, if you've watched the show, it's not even the original family anymore. It's so far off.
Oh, wow.
Although, I don't think I actually needed to rewatch the first 4 seasons. I had previously watched them more than once to try to get back into it, to try to jump on season 5 when that came out. And so I'd watched all 4 of those in the last year. So this time I just rewatched 5. 6 and 7 were also available, which is a lot. And right as season 7 starts, I'm like, what's going on? The voices are slightly different. They're pretty close, but they're slightly different. And there was a big noise about the show, and one of the creators got let go, and he was one of the main voices, and his voices have been replaced.
Oh, wow.
Rick and Morty's voice have been replaced.
Oh,
but they're
no.
totally fine, and they're doing a great job acting like those characters, because there's 6 seasons of material to work from.
They're doing an impersonation of
Yeah.
the original characters, essentially.
And interestingly, the show took a more, not mental health, but more of a less, the weird, Back to the Future, Marty and Doc Brown spin-off series. 'Cause
right.
This is like, the bad version of that movie. Like, what if Doc Brown wasn't a nice guy? What if he did do time travel for himself? So those first 3 seasons, you're kind of like just in this world of the adventures, and you're not totally understanding some of these threads that they have been weaving in, because they like to, the writers like to weave more interesting stuff in, so they have references they can go back to. These last 3 seasons, they really did take a different turn and focus more of the story on some of these, like one of the last episodes was this season. They gave you all these behind-the-scenes interviews of the writers and creators of the show, and they were talking about, like, however many seasons, how many times have these characters seen death and faced it? So now they're jaded, and let's write a story from that position where they need to actually figure out who each other is to themselves, because it's no longer just Grandpa and, his kid going on these ventures. They've had so many adventures. They've both grown up. Even though, Morty is still a teenager, forever. I really enjoy that that's the story arcs that they've been telling. Not to say I'm not enjoying the rest of the arcs that they did. I don't need any more of the dad stories. I'm good. He's lame. We got that. You hit that. You killed that story to death. We don't need him. But I will go ahead and list all the amazing voices. The dad being played by Christopher Purnell, and the mother, Sarah Chalk. They both had great arcs and enjoyable arcs. They're just like, if you had a sitcom dad, you'd really be like, yeah, no, that's great that he's having his arc. Can we get back to the main characters that the show is named after, please? So it's weird sci-fi. It references other sci-fi. You kind of need to know some of your sci-fi to get how smart and amazing the writers are actually being. It's on par with like a Futurama or Simpsons level of intelligent writing, but disguised as a cartoon and gross out humor. That's the wheelhouse I like. So yes, I will watch more. And that dropped at the end of last year. So I'm hopeful that there will be more episodes soon, now that I'm all caught up.
Yeah.
Speaking of caught up, that's everything I brought to the podcast.
Oh, okay. Nice. Wrapped on that note. Excellent. Okay, John.
Oh, me. So I went to the theater and saw the Bikeriders.
Oh, the Bikeriders. Okay.
Austin Butler.
Yeah.
I mean,
Different kind of Bikeriders.
Oh, yeah, because we had our whole other cycling thing. Okay, yeah. This is motorcycle bike riders.
Yeah, I'm gonna ignore what you guys are talking about.
Yeah, perfect. You should.
So yeah, I mean it's a real kind of a period piece. It's based on a photo book by Danny Lyon, which I'm slightly unfamiliar with.
Interesting. Okay.
And some things are definitely changed. They changed the name of the club because it's about a motorcycle riding club, and the height of those clubs, because apparently it's a real ecosystem, and some clubs are bigger or more serious than others. So this is one of the original ones, although they kind of changed how it starts in the movie. They have Tom Hardy start it, and his character does exist in reality, but they changed some things. Tom Hardy is, of course, incredible as a motorcycle club in charge guy. He's very serious.
When is this set?
They say it's 60s.
I thought maybe it was 80s, but now that you're saying one of the first motorcycle clubs, so.
Yeah, that was one of the big changes. Originally, this club was started in the 30s.
Oh, in the 30s.
So
okay.
Different. But they're not doing a lot of historical references to set you up on what time exactly, but it worked for me. And yes, Austin Butler is very good as, he just doesn't care.
Oh. Okay.
And that's what everybody wants, apparently. They kind of get into who would join a motorcycle club? And, if you're going to abide by not the rules that everybody abides by, maybe it's because you don't care about any rules, even though you still have rules. that comes up as well.
Different rules, bike rider club rules.
Yeah, exactly. And so it kind of shows this story from not exactly when they're starting, but near the start until kind of this big evolution that comes a little later. But Jodie Comer comes in, and she's so good. She kind of falls for Austin Butler, though maybe she shouldn't. And it ends in an interesting way. So I appreciated that through line. If you saw the preview, you might think like, oh, this is, I don't know what I think about this. She does a crazy Midwestern accent, and you're like, all right. But in the movie, I think it all kind of works, and you're really engaged in the story. The director and writer, Jeff Nichols, doesn't have a lot of movies, but I like quite a few of them, including Take Shelter and Mud. And one of his frequent collaborators, Michael Shannon, came in and played a kind of a crazy, smaller character who was just kind of a crazy man. Fine. It's fun. It's enjoyable.
All right.
You should see it. There you go. The other thing I saw in the theater was Firebrand.
Firebrand? I don't think I know Firebrand.
I didn't really know either until I was like, well, we're going to the theater. What's out there? I've seen everything else. Oh, this is about Henry VIII. Let's do it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how I missed that this was coming out, but Jude Law is Henry VIII.
What?
I've heard
Nice.
nothing about this.
Yeah.
I mean, this is an independent movie, and but it's a bigger one. And then Alicia Vikander as Catherine Parr, his last wife.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, it tells an interesting story. It's based on a book. It definitely changes or addresses. I mean, it's one of these things when you're dealing with history and like, oh, well, now we're going into the interior life and like, well, why would they have made those decisions? So then maybe we set them up to make that decision. So we kind of maybe added some things. But it's pretty incredible. I mean, Henry VIII, you hear about the wives, but they kind of humanized him in a different way because apparently, as a younger man, he was, as we saw with Damian Lewis in Tudors or whatever that show was, he was an attractive, physical, sporting guy, so women did like him. However, he then did have a leg injury that was like prolonged and never solved. That was why he got out of shape.
I knew that.
I didn't realize that either.
Okay.
The way they dealt with that was like, because, this isn't exactly medieval times, but like, oh, you don't really have real doctors. This is terrible.
Medicine at that time would have been pretty horrendous.
Yeah.
House of Dragons style?
Pretty much.
We're going to bleed you, sir. Yes, I'm feeling ill.
Yeah, I think, I don't want to say it, but I think it was maggots. So it seems bad.
Yeah, not ideal.
So anyway, showing him like still trying to be king and like dealing with this wife. Ooh, this is okay. I understand a little bit of, obviously you've made a lot of choices that maybe you shouldn't have made. But now that you're in this position, I understand how you're being driven. This was kind of after Protestantism has come about. And obviously he started the Church of England and away from Catholicism. But then also this whole thing of the Mass being in Latin versus in the actual language that people can understand, and then also having a Bible that they could read. So that all comes into play, and I didn't realize that was all happening at that time. So that was pretty interesting.
A little historical lesson built in there.
And
How was Jude Law? One of my favorites.
I was trying to say that it was such a great performance of Henry VIII that I didn't, it really brought it to life in a way that helped me understand. So Jude Law was the one who did that.
Nice.
Yeah, he was enjoyable. Look, it's rough. He's not always a sympathetic character, but I did like it a lot, or his performance and what they brought to it. And then you realize, part of the other whole thing is having an heir, right? So he's had all these wives. At this point, he only has 3 kids. I'm looking at the list, and it's like so many that died at various points. They also include the miscarriages or supposed miscarriages. So Catherine Parr, unfortunately, does not have a child. Also, a little bit of a spoiler, if you didn't know.
I was keeping track of that.
Yeah, the early 1500s.
What? I thought there Henry the Ninth. I thought there was a
no, but it's crazy what it's someone who's better at history, and I'm sure we all heard this at one point, but like those 3 kids all ended up being the monarch. First, his son, who was 12 or 14 at the time, was king for a short time, King Edward VI, and then replaced by a sister from a different wife, because all these 3 children are from different wives, and that was, Bloody Mary, Queen Mary I.
Oh.
Because that was a whole Protestantism versus Catholicism. That was what was happening there. Although married to Philip II of Spain. I'd forgotten that. And then you end up with Elizabeth I.
Right.
Who I'm named after.
Right. And a very important and, peaceful and very helpful reign in England's history. I didn't realize that was all tied to Henry VIII. That was his other kid. Those were his 3 children.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, they give you a clue because I wasn't thinking of it as I was watching, and you're seeing these kids, and they're not a huge part of the story. You do highlight on these two of the girls because they're older, and kind of what's happening, and like, oh, is somebody trying to make a move, and like, oh, this is all very challenging. But then at the end, they give you that little glimpse, and I was like, oh, that's right.
That's who that is.
Yeah, I think they said Elizabeth, and I was like, I think that might be the Elizabeth. But then at the end, then you can kind of understand. So I think also very enjoyable and worth it.
All right, interesting.
Did they go over who came up with that great song about Henry VIII from Ghost? I am Henry VIII, I am Henry VIII, I am.
No, that did not come up. That did come up that apparently he was also, I forgot, in addition to all his other qualities, he was also a musician and theoretically composed a couple songs. There's a moment that's fun. I didn't know that either.
Oh, okay. So interesting. All right. Okay. I think at this point we can wrap it up with a recap. So I talked about season 2 of House of the Dragon, which various people are also watching. Also, The Boys, season 4. And then Inside Out, both 1 and now the newly released 2.
So I watched Godzilla -1, followed by Eric, the limited series on Netflix, and then the Tour de France series Unchained on Netflix, followed by the documentary Mark Cavendish, Never Enough.
And I watched Ricky Stanicky on Prime, as well as Rick and Morty, seasons 4, 5, and 6 on Hulu and Max. And I also watched The Bad Shepherd on Apple TV, X-Men 97 on Disney Plus, and Atlas on Netflix.
I went to the theater and saw The Bikeriders, as well as Firebrand.
Lovely. Okay, so that's it for this episode. And thank you for joining us. You can follow us on all of our social media at Podcast Watching. And you can watch our episodes on YouTube at the Knack Entertainment YouTube channel. So thank you for joining us on Nobody's going to join me?
So thank you for joining us on What We're Watching.